Hi. Let me
Hello.
to see if anyone else is coming in. Okay, here we go.
How are you doing today, Hannah?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good. I'm having some issues, so that's why I can't turn my camera on, unfortunately. But
No
yeah.
worries at all.
I think that's all of us, right? All right. Well, Hannah, Hannah's our star right here. Hannah, I'm really interested into like what you do. We actually had a speaker in one of our classes that he's like the senior director of like the NBA, and like his job,
Yeah.
I don't know, it reminds me of what you're doing since you're working for Chase Center. But like what's something, I don't know, what's an experience that you've experienced at Chase Center that you've said, have you been there? I don't know if you said, was it you that said 2 years or you've been there?
Yeah, this summer will be 2 years.
Yeah, so like I don't know, what's something exciting that you've done as a social media coordinator there? I mean, I would like to know.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of things. Two of the things I always kind of talk about would be one, like the experience of literally standing in front of the doors as they're about to open the first time. That's something I thought I might not get to do again in my career. I'm going to get to do it again because we're in a global pandemic. But there's actually the general manager was telling me the other day, like in your career, they in the arena a lot of times people only get to open an arena once, and most people don't even ever open an arena. So that whole experience in itself, and like being at the show and covering it, of like this is the first time people were ever in the building, was just kind of phenomenal. My favorite piece of content, which kind of goes back to like what I was talking about, what I'm passionate about, would be we had Dead and Company for 2 nights over New Year's Eve. Actually, it was the last show we ever had at Chase Center before everything. But part of their fan base is this group called the Deafheads. So, like, Deadheads is their fan base. And the band thinks it's really important to make sure that, like, accessibility happens at their shows. So they have a pit in front of the literal floor-wide pit for hearing impaired, and they bring balloons and they hear the music through the vibrations. So I did a feature on them with our studio department, and those kinds of stories are the things that drive me. Like with every show, I'm trying to find like what is the epitome of like this artist or the fan base. Even like Dub Nation as a fan base, there's so many stories in there. And that interview, being able to like sit down and talk to these people about music who can't hear music, but we had so many of the same feelings about how it's impacted our life and why it means so much to us, was so touching. It's also one of those fan bases that like goes to every show, so I got to like see them both nights and hang out with them, and I hope in the future when Dead and Co comes back, I get to see so many of them again. So that's like probably one of my favorite experiences there. But when you work for an arena, you get just like a lot of weird experiences, because you work with food and beverage, you're working with a team, you're working with artists, you're working with San Francisco. So I do like a lot of everything. A lot of stories, if anyone ever wants to hear them.
I thought you only like focus just on like just social media, so that's amazing to know that you do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually kind of like right now I work as a student leader at SF State. So like I tend to interview students and create posts about it. I feel like it
Mm-hmm.
sounds kind of similar to that, but like on a much larger scale. And I feel like that's really cool and like amazing. Kind of question. If someone were to be like interested in the type of role that you are in outside of school, like as a career, do you have any advice on like how to stand out while applying for those type of roles, or like any skills that would prove to be beneficial?
Yeah. I think candidly, what helped me so much was the fact that I came from Golden One Center. I was there their inaugural concert season, so I kind of was in the beginning of that building opening, and so that was like the most direct experience. And like I knew I was kind of made for the role even before interviewing. So that helped a lot. I think getting to that point, it's what I talked about earlier, was just like taking on so many experiences. So I, in interviews, really wanted to be in a point where I like could answer every question, which isn't like the healthiest approach to things, to be honest. But I think having like a PR concentration and knowing how to write concisely and well is really important. Being able to chase down a story and be able to track down information is like a huge part of my job, is literally just gathering information to make sure that there's like things get translated to social media. Understanding like good content, so it's like the journalism side of video production and how things play is important. You definitely don't need a journalism degree. I think like I'm biased in the fact that it helps me a lot, but I have a journalism degree. My boss has a journalism degree. My counterpart at the Warriors has a sociology degree, and then another one has a sports management degree. So people come from all different backgrounds to kind of make it there. I think the most important thing is just being able to know like what drives you and what you want from the position, and being able to have experience that speaks to that, and then seeking out roles that are directly looking for that sort of thing.
Yeah, thank you. Kind of a follow-up question. So, as you progress in this industry and like this type of like role, what would be next for you, like in terms of like promotions, or like as you move forward in your career, like would they be a similar type of role, or what would that entail?
Yeah, so it's kind of something interesting in the social media space. Also, my internet is, I'm logged in as audio on my phone, but if I'm like freezing and making weird faces, I'm sorry. But people kind of go in a lot of different directions. You see people go more into like creative directing, or go more into like brand initiatives, so building out like brand campaigns. I am really tied to the content. I think if I were to stay at the Warriors, which the plan as of right now, I'd kind of want to be the Chase Center content person, because I'm already like working with the food and beverage people. I work with promoters, I work with players, I work with the artists sometimes. So I just kind of want to be the person who's like overseeing everything that goes across even other channels. I work with email a lot to give them content, and I think just being able to advocate for what kinds of content fans gravitate towards and how to make it play correctly across platforms is kind of what drives me. But as a career, you kind of see social media people go all over the place. I mean, it's not, there's every team has a director of social media. It's something you can continue title wise. There's always a talk of like who's going to be the first, what would it be, like senior or chief social director. I don't think that's out of the question. So it just kind of depends. And like I said, other companies, like social just always fits in different places. We are a social media team that lives under brand marketing. Sometimes it's like a whole digital department with a social team. Sometimes you're just under marketing. Like it kind of always falls in different places. And it's a lot of my application processes was like digging out what, like where you fit in the wheel.
Thank you. Another follow-up question, and I promise this will be the last one from me at least. How has your role changed throughout like COVID? Because like I know in person, like creating content, like you can take pictures, you can like incorporate all of that, but I don't know if that's as possible on a virtual scale.
It's changed a lot and many times. So when things first started, it was, I mean, it kind of follows suit with like how the world has evolved over the last year. It was like everyone was at home, capturing stuff in person was not in question. So a lot of my role was working with like our partners, or like a huge initiative I did in the beginning was part of Chase Center's story is that all the eateries are not just like your typical concessions. It's all small businesses from the Bay Area. So it was important to me that like we supported them, because we would be supporting them in the arena, and they were hit pretty hard in the pandemic. So I worked with them in like art directing, like on the phone with them, like take your cell phone like this and do this shot. And then I was just editing things at home. then as we looked towards starting the season, it really was working with our like corporate partners to figure out how we can fit their brand on our content and sponsor it. Just monetizing everything is kind of the MO these days. So there's a lot of like in the weeds with partners and discussing what they like what their brands were and like how we could do something on social that is natural and doesn't like feel weird, fits our brand. Now like a huge part of my role is actually 90% of our social strategy, if you look at our pages, is what I've called bringing the game to you. So these social platforms exist to peel back the curtain of what this state-of-the-art brand new arena gives, and we can't do that and there's no fans. So it's programming the feeds every day to bring like what your game experience would be if you were able to go into the building. So it's bringing and figuring out halftime performances and posting them, dance team performances. I make like pregame playlists that like give the vibe of what our DJ in the arena usually kind of plays. It's interacting a lot with Warriors content, doing like biggest play of the game and like, oh my God, I know you guys would have gone crazy in the fans for this, like Steph doing his millionth 3-point shot, like that sort of thing. So yeah, it's changed a ton, and it's how social always goes. You never know at the drop of a button when you have to shift things just based on how quickly the internet moves. That's another part of this past year is like I cannot comprehend how many days I've had to go on and pull all my scheduled posts because some shit's breaking. Like people are going to the Capitol and like, yeah. So like, that's like just a huge part of social in general. Is like always paying attention to what's going on and having to be really adaptable. That's just been a large muscle I've used in the last year for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nadia, for asking these really great questions. Does anyone else have any other questions? I want to ask one too. I want to go ahead and let anyone. Okay, go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to ask because I know obviously the Chase Center it sounds like you got in there from the jump. So did you notice a difference? Like, did you get to set the precedent in your role because you were kind of the first one, I guess is my question, because that's really attractive to me. And then second kind of part of this question is it seems like, sorry if it's too much, but it seems like with your role, you have to communicate with a lot of different people. How do you I mean, are you like naturally extroverted? How do you handle that? Like, it sounds exciting, but exhausting.
Yeah. So the first part would be I like love the fact that I've basically built the strategy from the ground up. That like naturally happens when there's no one in the building and then you're there for it opening and you stay there for 2 years. I think anytime a new person comes into a social role, like if you look at teams, they've had like multiple classes of people running their social media, just the natural turnover rate of things when people go to other teams. So that's something like you always can kind of tell a fresh look when you know someone is going to another team. I will say I did advocate like from my interviews that like I wanted to be able to write articles sometimes that lived on social, and I wanted to be able to like be at video shoots and like advocate for the quotes I wanted in the videos. And that's something I'm continuously like, oh, when's the shoot happening? I want to be there and be able to capture behind the scenes or like produce it a little bit to make sure it's like what I want. So it's a bit of like naturally being put in the position, but also again, knowing exactly what I want and being able to advocate for it. And I do think it's like asking for the ownership. I'm constantly like telling my boss, like, I know this is happening, I want to do it. Like I think that makes you like a natural point person. And that's been a ton of my job over the last year is just like showing up for Chase Center. It's one half of the brand of a basketball team. So just like establishing yourself as the person to go for information, and then it just kind of snowballs from there. In terms of communicating, I'm actually like pretty naturally introverted, but it is a huge part of the job. My boss often calls herself a shit umbrella. Like she's like, I just sit in meetings all day and I'm a shit umbrella and make sure shit doesn't land on social. And that is kind of how it is. It's chasing down information. That's, I think, like the biggest part of my journalism degree that comes into play is like following up on things and like just being aware of what's going on and making sure people aren't planning for something that's maybe going to go to social without you putting your word into it. It gets tiring. It's something, if you follow a lot of social media professionals, burnout is a huge topic of conversation, especially in the last year, because you do have to kind of be online all day. You have your hands in so many buckets. You're a copywriter, you're a producer, you're a writer, you're a graphic designer sometimes, even though those roles exist separately. But I like it because I like all those things. But yeah, it's just kind of part of it. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how it is.
No, it does. I mean, I'm kind of interested because I like all those things too. I love everything you just said about kind of being the point person and being the person to kind of get to organize. And, you know, you are the one who's like, have your hand in all these buckets so you can have the content you want to put out. But I'm kind of a naturally introverted person too. So I'm glad to hear that you've found ways to kind of handle that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think the more you put yourself out there, and like I said, that's something I learned is I really didn't want to ever speak up in a meeting, like prior to this position. I also had a short 9 months as a product manager, so I worked in tech and I had no idea what the hell I was doing the whole time, and I ended up being pretty successful in that role just because I just kind of had to like swallow that voice in my head that was telling me you can't do it or you don't know what you're talking about, and just do it. And the more you do, the easier it gets. But I definitely resonate with like being introverted and being more shy and it being intimidating, and it is. And you just have to like know that you're capable and you don't need to listen to that voice.
Thank you, Hannah. I had a question. So, as someone, I'm about to graduate this spring, and I see that a lot of roles that are like in social media content creation and all that stuff, like it has a couple requirements, and I'm just wondering, like, what do you recommend us, like, any skills that you think we should get before, trying to land a job like this? Maybe editing skills, taking a course, or anything like that besides internships?
Yeah, hands-on experience pressing send on any sort of accounts that you can would probably be the most important thing. I know like one of the questions I got in this interview process was like, why did you step away from social? Just because it like changes so much like over the year, like they're pumping out like crazy amount of features on these platforms all the time, and you kind of always have to like figure out how to like play into it. So the more you can like be in the weeds with the social platforms, the better off you're going to be, and that's probably the most important thing. Being able to write really well is definitely important. Like a tweet is 280 characters. You got to make it creative. You got to make it stick. And like sometimes I spend 30 minutes making coffee because it's like that's how it is. Even if like on Instagram where you could write paragraphs and paragraphs, it's not always the best strategy. So writing is hugely important. And yeah, I think just being really in tune with what kind of content is on social media, just because we're seeing like even like paid social is the way to go over like a commercial nowadays. So just knowing what brands are doing what and how it's working and being able to speak to that will show that you just kind of get it. But yeah, I think a lot of the best social media managers just kind of have good instinct, and it comes from being aware and kind of always paying attention to how things are playing online.
Thank you. I'm just curious, what like editing software do you use? Or like, I know like right now a lot of people use like Canva and stuff like that. Do you also use that, or is there anything like that you do? I know there's like Adobe, like the Creative Cloud and all this stuff. I'm just wondering like how
Yeah,
to know that.
I'm 100% on Creative Cloud. That's pretty universal for people in my role. I used Final Cut for videos at the Kings, but I think they moved 100% to Premiere like right after I left. So Adobe Creative Cloud is pretty much where it is for global brands. I know like if you're doing social for a lot of small business and maybe like building their brand from like the literal ground up, like 0 followers, and like there's not so much budget for that sort of technology, Canva like certainly is something you can use. I did social media for my brother's basketball team, and like I just used Canva because I was a college student who didn't want to pay for Adobe on my personal computer. But yeah, I think if you knowing at least some skills in Creative Cloud is certainly important. That being said, like my counterpart at the Warriors is like can poke around in Premiere and like knows the basics of what he needs to do to get content up, but he's way more into like how things play online and like really knowing like this length video needs to go here with like this kind of thumbnail, and that's his shtick. So I wouldn't be so intimidated by the content creation side of it because a lot of roles don't need it. Like I ask for that.
Oh, okay. Thank you for letting me know about that. I was wondering, our school actually has access, if anyone knows here, to Adobe Creative Cloud. So I was just wondering because I've been trying to teach myself a couple things.
Yeah, I mean it's hard. Like I can get through Photoshop. I'm decent at it. I'm certainly not a graphic designer. Same thing. Like I can put together some things in Premiere, but I'm not going to win an Emmy for like what my timeline looks like. Like I think the basic being able to understand how you fix things and how you make things look okay is what you need. Unless you want more. Like there's people, my boss at the Kings was like incredible in Premiere. It's also like he didn't have a team allocated to him, so he had to be, and that's not the case so much anymore. But everyone kind of just brings to the table what their thing is. It's, social media is like super versatile.
Yeah, I've seen like some internships have like those requirements. I was just wondering if that was the case for you as well. But does anyone else have any questions here? I know we've been taking the floor a little bit here. If you want to go ahead and say anything, please do.
I have a question. What's one piece of advice you could give to a graduating senior wanting to get into your role that you currently have?
Yeah, I think when I look back at where I was at when I graduated, I was exhausted, and I spent 4 months chasing after this dream and making it to the end of so many interviews and then saying like, sorry, you just like are fresh out of college, and like it really left a sour taste in my mouth, and that's part of the reason why I took a tech salary and went to a tech agency, because I just like needed a break before I even started, which is an interesting concept. So I would just say like, one, enjoy the ride. That's like something in college I wish I did a little more. I was so stressed out about a job, and I placed all my value on what that job title was going to be. And at the end of the day, you all graduate and people post what what city they're moving to and what job they have, and then it's just like it really doesn't matter. And what matters is like what you wake up and how you feel. So just pay attention to what like that, like what lights you up and what you want to do every single day. Don't worry about like so much of like the title or the company. I mean, worry about like how the company treats you, but like the glamorous part of it just like really doesn't matter. The other thing is, if you want to go into social, would be to figure out how to take care of yourself. I think we spend so much time, and I just see all these like articles that are like 10 things to do to avoid burnout, and I'm like, that's like, it happens. You're gonna get burned out. You're online all day. You have 10 people asking you the same question in 4 different ways. Like you're gonna get burned out. And I learned, and I wish I paid a little more attention in college too, like what I needed to make myself get through a bad day. I know now I need to like say what's bothering me, whether it's writing it out or just like venting to a friend and like getting it out of my psyche in some way. And then like treating my body, like doing something physical, being outside helps me tremendously if it's not Arctic storm as it is right now. So those are like kind of vague things, but I do think if you're going to work in social, it's like really, really important, as well as like just being able to advocate for yourself, because I'm in a company where social media is valued, but at the same time, I still find myself across like to partners or even to people who understand what I do, like what I do, just because everyone uses social, so everyone thinks they can do it. So just like developing that tough skin and advocating for yourself is super important.
Yeah, so it's actually great that you mentioned that, Hannah, because I feel like coming out of college, you're just like, what if like I'm not I'm not entitled to like work here. Like I don't have the necessary skills and all that. So like do you think that you learn everything like on the job, or at least most of it on the job, or like did college really prepare you, or did you think maybe you should have taken other classes to prepare you more for your first position?
Yeah, college prepared me because I did so much hands-on experience. But at the same time, I learn every single day. Like you can be super prepared and be like the best person ever in the industry, and the world can go into a global pandemic, and no one knows how to navigate that. So everyone is always learning all the time. I think, like I said, my first job out of college was being a product manager, and I was looking at code all day, and I tweeted all through college. Like just being able to have like the skills of advocating for yourself and like working really hard and intentionally genuinely kind of translates to a lot of jobs. And I wouldn't get so hung up on like, I'm not qualified for this and I can't do this. Like just think about like what matters to you, and like is the job going to serve you in that way.
Yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else wants to ask anything to Hannah here?
Yeah, I have a question. So, what's your favorite platform to like either create content or like manage?
Twitter, just because I think as a product it plays the best. It's like the easiest to engage with. It's the easiest to like do complex content with. I hate Facebook. YouTube you can make a lot of money on, but I like Jason also just doesn't have much content for YouTube right now. Instagram stories are like creative, really, really fun. I think Instagram's kind of where you're like, you do a lot on it. I assist on we're going to go up, but I assist on the Warriors TikTok a lot. And that has been like a really fun, refreshing project to be a part of. And I like currently like TikTok's creeping up on like Twitter for like the favorite platform.
I also love TikTok. I'm literally on it all the time.
It's a like good platform.
Yeah, it's really engaging.
Yeah.
But, okay, you guys. Thank you, Hannah, for
Thank
this.
you.
Thank you guys.